Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan, Honorable Senior Puny Judge of Pakistan, Honorable Chief Justice of Lahore High Court, Honorable Chief Justice of the Islamabad High Court, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court, Honorable Judges of the High Courts, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. We start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. This Quranic verse is also inscribed at the very beginning of our Constitution. And every judge, constitutional office holder, and all members of the armed forces recite it before they proceed to take the oath to uphold the Constitution. Every citizen of Pakistan and every person in Pakistan is required to abide by the Constitution. It's a very long topic, and I'm impressed with your resilience that after 3 hours you're still here. So I'm confident for the future of democracy if brave people like you show such resilience in hearing old men like me. Thank you. The Constitution guarantees about 24 human rights. I should just mention, I had written a 16-page paper. I won't inflict it on you, but there are copies available for those who want to read it. It's referenced. And why did I write it? I wrote it for the fear of that lady. For the fear of that lady. आके तकरीर कर गए, कुछ पढ़ लेते जज साहब. So okay, so I don't know if she'll acquit me or not. I'll do my best. I won't go through the entire fundamental rights. The topic is interesting, human rights and strengthening democracy, and each one of the fundamental rights one can spend a day on talking about it. Now, I shall briefly mention a few fundamental rights which are perceived to be the most under attack in Pakistan. Freedom of the press and the related right to information, and the rights of women, including the right of girls to be educated. Her Excellency Kaminara wanted to see a lady judge in the Supreme Court. What she failed to mention is that a lady judge was appointed for the first time in Balochistan, who rose to the rank of Chief Justice of Balochistan. Asma Jhangi became the President of Pakistan, President of the Supreme Court Bar Association of Pakistan. There was some conference which she had arranged, and there was a large Indian contingent. I said, your nation has still not had a lady as the President of your Bar Association. Yes. Another distinction for this country is, and that is a distinction amongst 50 Muslim countries of the world, we had the first Muslim Prime Minister. Yes. Justice Athar Nilala has said a number of things which I did, and he has complimented Gur Sahab, who we're also a bit scared of. And he mentioned judges who did not take oath. He forgot to mention the first of them. He was from Balochistan as well, Justice Dora Patel. It is a dismal situation. Unless you don't own up to the truth, there is no chance for redemption. The World Press Freedom Index evaluates 180 countries and ranks them according to the prevalence of press freedom. In 2017 and 2018, Pakistan stood at the very low 139th position of the Freedom Index. We've slipped down to the 145th position. This is unforgivable. Why do I say that? We were amongst the first countries of the world who signed up to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the first 48 signatories, Pakistan was there. Liaquat Ali Khan signed it. And what did this Universal Declaration of Human Rights say in its Article 19? Everyone has a right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. That was not all. This was an international document. Pakistan enacted what we refer to as the Objectives Resolution. And this too was done by the first Prime Minister of Pakistan in the year 1949 by the Constituent Assembly. And it has formed part of every Constitution of Pakistan till today. And today too it is part of the preamble of the Constitution, but its status has now been raised as it is now becoming a substantive part of the Constitution since the year 1985. And from this I will read, freedom of thought and expression must be ensured. And another portion of this Objectives Resolution which we sometimes forget to mention is the role of the founder of this great nation, Qazi Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And this Objective Resolution binds us all to be faithful to the declaration made by the founder of Pakistan, Qazi Muhammad Ali Jinnah, that Pakistan would be a democratic state based on Islamic principles of social justice. Democracy, you don't beg for democracy, it is your right to demand democracy. One of the greatest constitutional minds that the subcontinent produced was Jinnah. And as far back as the press, he was commenting about the Press Act of 1910. 1910, 111 years ago. And he called it a striking blow at the liberty of the press which we all prize. And I again quote the great leader, gagging the legitimate constitutional expression of the public opinion and criticism of the government by banning meetings and processions and other executive methods by which the police and the administration are used not only to gag the free expression of opinion and criticism, which are the elementary rights of the citizen, but have destroyed all semblance of civil liberties and have by various methods chloroformed the press. I will not pass judgment on today's press. You are better. An international organization will better do that. He stood before in the Imperial Legislative Council, of which he was a member, and spoke truth to a foreign occupying power. Do these words resonate today? That is your call. Are you going to keep millions and millions of people trodden under your feet for fear that they may demand more rights? Are you going to keep them? Are you going to keep them in ignorance and darkness forever and for all ages to come, because they may stand up against you and say that we have certain rights and you must give them to us? Is that the feeling of humanity? Is that the spirit of humanity? It is the elementary right of every man to say, if he is wrong, that he is wrong, that he is, and that he should be righted. That's our founder's words. And were these new novel words, or was he following an earlier and a much, much greater tradition? The teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And what did he say? This is a well-established hadith, and I have referenced all points in my paper. There are 85 references. The best jihad is to speak truth to a tyrannical ruler. The best jihad, Jihad-e-Akbar, this is a greater one. Jihad-e-Asghar is a lesser one, which you take up arms for the sake of the Almighty, not for any other purpose. And this, the Prophet derives from the Holy Quran, which says, speak the truth. And it's not just one, there are a number of verses of the Holy Quran which says so, and these have been listed as well. There's a very famous incident. A man came to the Prophet and said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I have many sins. I steal, I gamble, I drink, and I lie. But for your sake, I'll give up one of them. Stop lying. The fundamental right to information, also has its moorings in Islam. The Holy Quran in a number of verses prohibits the concealment of public matters which the people have the right to know, and consider such concealment to be satanic. There are many stories which you know better than me, where prophets, where Khulafai Rashidin were asked, how did you get this extra cloak or shirt? And they did not get angry, they answered. There are two important decisions of the courts of Pakistan regarding Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation and Pakistan Television Corporation. I will not go into the details of it. I'll just quote one portion from it. If the Prime Minister spoke as a party leader on Pakistan TV or BBC, then the opposition was entitled to equal coverage. And if this was not done, it would be clearly discriminatory and thus not permissible. This judgment stands till today. A free and robust press is the backbone of democracy, serving both as a conscience and as a mirror. History tells us that totalitarian regimes suppress the press and impose censorship. Regard now the other fundamental rights, rights of women. We are doing poorly. I think Excellency Turner mentioned the Global Gender Gap Index, where we are at number 153 out of 156. Why has that happened? Women's participation and empowerment, the founder guaranteed in a select central working committee of the All India Muslim League, encompassing nearly the all of subcontinent. There was always a lady member, Begum Muhammad Ali. Fatima Jinnah was an educated woman, accompanied her brother everywhere where he went, and she stood in elections against the dictator of the day. The non-discriminatory equality principle is embedded in Islam. And I quote the Quran, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is the one who is the most righteous. One can be either a man or a woman. There is no distinction. There is no superiority. And another thought which we don't realize how the importance, the significance of women. The part thread by a woman has been incorporated as an obligatory ritual in Islam. As far as I'm aware, with my limited knowledge of other faiths, this is probably the only ritual in established religion which has been established by a woman. And that was the running of Bibi Hajra, may Allah be pleased with her, between the hills of Safa and Marwa, looking for water for her son, Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. So this is the status, and where have we come to? Where indeed we have come to. These are not isolated examples, that the list goes on and on. Prophets, Hazrat Khadija bin Khalid was a businesswoman, widowed of 15 years age difference. Can we envisage this happening in today's society? She is referred to as Ummul Mu'mineen, mother of all Muslims. Does anyone emulate her example? Does anyone emulate the example of the Prophet in this regard? Or always the second wife is a younger woman? Then we have, and did not marry during her lifetime again, and then we have the great example of Hazrat Abu Bakr's daughter, Aisha, may Allah be pleased with both of them, that we narrate hadiths
and she is the source of about 3,000 of them. Not only that, she participated in battle, she taught in the mosque, and these are well-established facts. It's not just the case that the Prophet's family were so privileged. The Hazrat Umar Farooq, may Allah be pleased with him, appointed Shifa bint Abdullah, a woman who was experienced in business matters, as market inspector in Medina. Now, imagine, go back in time. Then, that society. In our constitution, the state is required to provide free and compulsory education to all children of all ages from age 5 to age 16. But what is happening? Ill-tempered ferociousness is displayed to keep women and girls out of school and keep them illiterate and uneducated. The ignorant who target girls going to school and attack school audaciously justify their violent acts as being Islamic. The Holy Quran itself exposes their monstrous lies. The very first wahi, revelation from up high to the Prophet was one word, Iqra, Fail Amr, the command form of the word, read. Of the myriads of other things that the Almighty could have conveyed to his last prophet, he chose the word Iqra, and then he followed it by the word pen, which is in the 4th verse, and then by the word education or learning, which is in the 5th verse. So the first speech through Archangel Jibreel alayhi salam, or Gabriel, was read, write, education or learn. So these are the fundamentals of the faith. Now I move to the second part of the, I think that I won't do justice to the thing, and that is how have we judicially strengthened democracy. I thank the organizers for their graciousness in not placing a question mark at the end. I think they insinuated it though. Pakistan may be the only country in the world whose judiciary has played a major role in determining the course of democracy. 24th October 1954, Ghulam Muhammad, Governor General, boots out, closes shop, closes democracy. Maulvi Tamizuddin Khan assails the act, which Chief Justice Islamabad High Court has mentioned. They go before the 5-member bench of the Sindh Chief Court, it was then known as, which unanimously decided allowed the petition. And I just quote one line from it. The Constituent Assembly purported dissolution is a nullity in law, and that both it and the office of its president are still existent. I fail to see how the action of the respondents can possibly be defended on any ground whatsoever. How wrong could 5 judges be? And they were led by Justice Constantine. Because the federal court where the appeal was filed was presided over by Muhammad Munir, and they had other views. And this, if I was to not quote it, you won't believe it, but this is a reported judgment, it is in the textbooks. About the Constituent Assembly, he said, it lived in a fool's paradise if it was ever seized with the notion that it was a sovereign body in the state. Then who is? One doesn't know. I'm quite clear in my mind that we are not concerned with the consequences, however beneficial or disastrous they may be, and brazenly disregarded the consequences. Now what hubris, what utter self-assured hubris. Then elections held, 1956, Constitution comes on 23rd of March 1956. Major General Iskandar Mirza throws it out, throws out the assembly, throws out the elected people, throws out the elected governments. And then, sadly, the Supreme Court, hearing 2 criminal appeals, infamously known as the Doso case, criminal appeals, they go out and justify such unconstitutional act. And how do they do so? the Constitution was vanquished by the Supreme Court, relying on the theoretical musings of an Austrian writer. And I just quote from the judgment: a victorious revolution or a successful coup d'etat is an internationally recognized legal method of changing a constitution. These are judges who had sworn to uphold the constitution, but they were mesmerized by the writings of Hans Kelsen and certified him to be a renowned modern jurist. Incidentally, Hans Kelsen had to leave Austria when another Austrian, Hitler, took over power. So he should have stood there and said, I stand by my words now. Then Muhammad Ayub Khan, Commander-in-Chief, he did the same act. He drafted his own constitution in the year 1962. He did not abide by his own constitution, handed it over to another general, General Yahya Khan. And then comes the role of this lady, who was then a young woman, Asma Jilani. She challenged the detention of her father, Malik Ghulam Jilani, and the validity of the Defense of Pakistan rules under which he was incarcerated. And there was another petition as well by Zarina Gohar challenging Altaf Hussain Gohar, the editor-in-chief of Dawn's, his detention. And what does the Supreme Court now say? They overruled Doso's judgment and said a perfectly good country was made into a laughing stock. A country which came into being with a written constitution providing for a parliamentary form of government with distribution of state power between the executive, legislature and the judiciary was soon converted into an autocracy and eventually degenerated into military dictatorship, and the people ceased to have any share in the exercise of state powers. These are words of the Supreme Court. Next elections, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto is elected as Prime Minister, and what remains of Pakistan, its western wing, becomes Pakistan, and the constitution, the present constitution, was adopted or came into effect on 14th of August 1973. But soon we are back to square one. 5th of July 1977 comes and General Ziaullah, the Chief of our Army Staff, seizes power. Again, the Supreme Court, and this Supreme Court headed by Chief Justice Anwarul Haq, quote, the declared objectives of the martial law are to create conditions suitable for the holding of free and fair elections. What irony. In terms of the 1973 Constitution, yet we know first it was 1 month, then 9 months, and then 11 years till the next elections came on non-party basis. Such a mockery was made of Islam, misuse of the teachings of Islam was because nowhere in the Quran the Almighty does not even grant such pharaonic powers to His beloved, the prophets. And once we got rid, that this was the direct device. The indirect device was the Article 58 2B of the Constitution, which is no longer there, which was first used by Ghulam Ishaq Khan because of a speech given by the then Prime Minister Mir Mohammad Nawaz Sharif on 17th of April 1993, and then the same power of sacking the government. But this time they were lucky, as the Supreme Court by a majority of 10-1 restored the National Assembly and the Cabinet. The next time it was used on 5th of November 1996 by Farooq Ahmad Khan Laghari in dissolving the first woman Prime Minister and her Cabinet and sent her home. The country was not so lucky. And politician Mahmood Khan Achakzai, he too belongs to Balochistan. And others challenged this. And the then Chief Justice Azad Ali Shah said this, I quote him, in fact, Article 58 2B has shut the door on martial law forever. Could anyone have been so wrong? Because on 12th of October 1999, another general struck General Pervez Musharraf and seized power. And this was again validated by the Supreme Court by a voluminous judgment of running into 287 paragraphs by the then Chief Justice Irshad Hasan Khan. And here, how did the Supreme Court endorse his dictatorial rule? It said state necessity and used a Latin maxim.
Again on 3rd of November 2007. I just should mention the earlier attacks and the later attacks were different. Ziaul Haq and then all later dictators realized that first of all, I will now use Excellency Sterner's love of cricket, that you must not only get an umpire of your choice, you must fix the field, you must permit ball tampering. What am I saying? First, judges take an oath of loyalty to me, the dictator of the day, and then hear the cases. So this is the new set that started by first compelling judges to take oath, and those who did not take went home. Justice Dora Patel had set a great precedent, which sadly few followed. He manipulated a petition filed by Tika Muhammad Iqbal and which got endorsed in virtually 20 days. He incarcerated the then Chief Justice of Pakistan and 13 judges of the Supreme Court. A nationwide protest ensued. A nationwide. That's where your responsibility comes in. Known as the lawyers' movement, but I think it was all of civil society. And we have one articulate member of that society on the bench, as a speaker. It's just a mere coincidence that he's from Balochistan. And judges were finally restored on 23rd of March 2009. Finally, and I hope this is the final nail in the coffin, a 14-member bench of the Supreme Court headed by Iftikhar Muhammad Chaudhary allowed the petition filed by the Sindh High Court Bar Association, uprooted the decision in Tika Muhammad Khan and all earlier decisions of the Supreme Court where they had validated unconstitutional dictatorial military rule. It was Chaudhary Sahab wrote 200 paragraphs. Yes, I will not read them. I will just read additional note, I think, which sums it up beautifully, and that comprises of only 6 paragraphs. I'm only going to read one, and that was by Justice Jawad S. Khwaja. He writes, can constitutional legitimacy flow from the force of arms, or, as is more graphically put at times, from the barrel of a gun? And if reliance on coercive force is gaining power is legitimized or condoned, there can be no rational basis for decrying the assault on the writ of the state by any band of marauders, robbers, adventurers and zealots of varying extremes in the political spectrum, who undoubtedly will be encouraged in adopting similar use of arms and violence to force their ideological creeds on the people of Pakistan. The people of Pakistan have consciously chosen the method for their own governance. The Constitution is a document which at the conscious level records in classical terms the social contract between the people and those who they chose to entrust with the governance of the state. Courts have nothing to do with it. And I should just mention the World Justice Rule of Law Index, which has been referred to. Kursab, here I disagree with you. We are not at 126 number, we are at 130 number as per the report out of 139 countries, which is not good. Which is not a matter to clap. It's a matter of reflection. Now, all this is very well. All this is very well. What do we do? What do we collectively do? What do we individually do? And I will again go back to the Constitution. The Constitution commences by stating that sovereignty over the entire universe belongs to Almighty Allah alone, and that authority to be exercised is by the people of Pakistan through their chosen representatives. The second recital refers to the will of the people of Pakistan, and it specifically denigrates oppression and tyranny. So we come to now reflect, or we should, as a nation, not just the judiciary, not just the lawyers, not just civil society, but every citizen of Pakistan should reflect. There must be, there are other countries of the world, there is truth commissions, but we have an older device, much older, a device which is found in the Holy Quran. And this is the concept of muhasaba. I'll come to that in a minute. We need to reflect, admit and accept our mistakes, set aside our arrogance and delusions, seek forgiveness and promise never to violate the Constitution again. Only then there is the possibility of being forgiven by the people. We are there because of the people. People are not there because of us. Islam requires us to do something very similar in the concept of muhasaba. Muhasaba means introspections, self-scrutiny, self-evaluation and self-examination, and leads to seek forgiveness, tawbah, which attracts divine mercy. Almighty Allah has prescribed mercy on Himself. This is the Quran, Holy Quran says. Among the 99 names or attributes of God is At-Tawwab, the acceptor of repentance. A person who repents, does tawbah and resolves not to repeat the same mistake again, frees himself from the web of delusion. Muhasaba redacts self-esteem, self-importance, pride and arrogance. If we remain delusional and arrogant, do not reflect, do not admit our mistakes, and do not seek forgiveness for our trespasses, there is no possibility of redemption in this world before the people, and in that world before our Creator. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
YouTube पर Googly न्यूज देखने के लिए youtube.com की सर्च बार में Googly न्यूज टीवी टाइप करें। Googly न्यूज के पेज पर सुर्ख रंग के सब्सक्रिप्शन वाले बटन पर क्लिक करना ना भूलिए। YouTube पेज पर अपलोड होने वाली वीडियोस से बाखबर रहने के लिए बेल आइकन पर क्लिक कीजिए। आपको हर नई वीडियो के बारे में नोटिफिकेशन मौसूल हो जाएगा।